worth. In any event, measures to estimate the overall value of a company. And this is always kind of fun to do, all right? Al and I used to do this a lot with a lot of the companies that we jointly valued together, all right? So this company has 3,896 in sales, if you remember, in the last year. And the multiple factor, where did I get that? Multiples based on averages for industry or peer group companies. So what you look for are companies that are in the same industry, okay, that has been valued, or a company that is in the industry, privately held, that has recently been sold, and there's some publicity about that, okay? And so I made these up, multiple factor of 0.9, all right? And so 0.9 times revenues, the company is worth, by that measure, that relative value measure, 3.5. Market to net income, I'm using a PE ratio of 10, and so it's worth about that. And so market to EBITDA, and then market to book value. I'm using twice the book value, twice the value of owner's equity on the balance sheet, and it's worth here. And so it looks like this company, and this is a wide range, is worth somewhere between 2.7 and 4 million. Okay? And it's kind of an interesting kind of analysis to go through. And when Al and I would value companies for the terminal value at the end of our forecasting period, which usually used to be 5 years, we would try all of these for the terminal value and then discount them all back. Okay? And so what you see is this is a way to convert two performance indicators that relate to the finance function. Okay? Now, that's great. All right? But I'd like to talk about the balanced scorecard, which is the next section in the handout I gave you, the balanced scorecard. And the balanced scorecard has been around since around 1990. If you were to go to Google, there'll be over 2 million hits for this, okay? It is the single most integrated measurement system now used to measure performance. And one of the things that it does is it integrates financial and non-financial measures, okay? And one of the concerns of the authors, or the creators of this method, Robert Kaplan and David Norton, was that there was too much concern with the financial and not enough concern with the other areas that needed attention. So for example, with product development, as I said, product development usually requires R&D expenditures. It may require continued training of your employees, okay? It may be the hiring of people at higher salaries or compensation levels than they can currently, that can less currently be justified with respect to current levels of profit, all right? And so there's trade-offs that have to be made here. And they wanted to be sure that these others were considered. And so they said, wait a minute, what we have to do is balance financial and non-financial measures. Okay, financial and non-financial. So we've talked about the financial measures. Balance short-term and long-term measures. All right? Balance performance drivers, leading indicators, with outcome measures, lagging indicators. By the way, virtually all financial measures are considered to be lagging indicators. These are the results, okay? They're outcome measures. Now, of course, if you do these on a monthly basis, if you try to look at trends, it's a way to try to move them towards being like leading indicators. But when we talk about leading indicators, we're talking about performance measures that are things that you do that lead to good results here. And one of the analogies that's often drawn with just concentrating on financial measures, it's like driving a car by looking in the rearview mirror. Okay? Driving a car by looking in the rearview mirror. So what we want are leading indicators. And of course, we want to have just enough data to get a complete picture of the organization's performance. Okay? And these are the 4 areas that we are told to concentrate on or suggested: financial, customer, internal processes, learning and growth. This is the one where we concentrate on efficiency, timeliness. Okay? This is the one where we try to understand what the customer's needs are and what the reactions to us are. And as a matter of fact, although this is the way that this table is usually presented, actually I think financial should be down here. That what you do is you first concentrate on your customer and output user. You try to make your internal processes as efficient as possible. You then talk about learning and growth. Okay, learning and growth. This is where your R&D is. This is where it's training. For example, if your company says, all right, if you want to go continue your education, if you get a bigger B or better in a course, we will pay your tuition. That's learning and growth. So one of the measures we could use is number of classes passed, completed by employees during the last year, during the last semester, successfully. And we could define successful as being a B or better. That would be one way to do it. We could also use total dollar expenditures for that. R&D expenditures, all right? Number of patents that we generated, okay?
And what would Goldman Sachs look like?
They would claim no, that comes first. I'm not prepared to give any answer on Goldman Sachs. I've been reading the articles too about them. Here, for example, here are customer perspective. What about customer satisfaction? How might we measure that? We might measure that by what? Survey results. All right? Another way that's very, very interesting, that this is how you get to performance leading indicators as opposed to lagging indicators. It's a very interesting thing. I don't know if you've had this. I know that for a while I owned an Infinity. And when I would bring the Infinity to the service center to be repaired or have the oil change, when I came out of there, okay, the service manager that I worked with would show me a questionnaire. And then there would be, 5 or 6 questions on there. Some of them related to how clean the car was, how timely it was the charges that I was going to be charged well explained, okay, etc. And then they had a scale from 1 to 10. 10 being the best. And he would say to me, Vince, is there any item on here that you could not give us a 9 or a 10? If not, tell me right now what we got to do to get you up to a 9 or 10. Now, of course, from the standpoint of scorekeeping, there's a little question here as to whether that's entirely accurate, okay? But on the other hand, it is giving them an opportunity to make amends right on the spot. So it's very, very interesting in those kinds of situations. So customer satisfaction. Another thing that you also hear, customer loyalty, all right? We want to have the most loyal customers in the business. I remember when my dad was buying cars, he always bought Buicks, always. And I have an uncle who and my uncle would always argue because my uncle always bought Oldsmobiles, all right? They wouldn't think of buying a different car. So that was customer loyalty. Well, customer retention, how do we measure that? Well, one way is percentage of sales to current customers. Percentage of sales to current customers. So, what are you saying to a dealer? You're saying to a dealer, not only do you have to hit that 10% sales growth target that I gave you overall, but in addition to that, I expect 20% of your sales to come from former customers. And so that changes the dynamics. It changes your focus. It changes the efforts you will make. And so These are the kinds of things: market share in targeted segments, customer profitability. This has become much more possible to do accounting-wise with activity-based costing, all right, which was not so easy to do before. And of course, that's beyond the scope of today's discussion. But in any event, that's what you do. And then internal business processes, okay? Internal business processes. Here, the focus is on critical internal processes that we're going to do well to make ourselves more efficient and more timely. And, and so we have these unique set of processes for creating value for customers and producing financial results. And so here, these again are some of the leading indicators. And you get into process cycle times. These are things we would measure. Project milestone success rates, workload and employee utilization. This is when you get into that revenue per employee. And lots of other things that are measurable per the type of job they do. Number of transactions per employee, error rates, rework percentages, these kinds of things. And so what you're trying to do, again, is cascade downward into all of the blocks on an organization chart and look in that box and say, what do they do? And which of these relate to them? And can I tie some of their bonus, okay, or some kind of incentive compensation to them through these performance indicators? Learning and growth, training hours and retention, and resources, technology investments, retention and turnover, number of employee suggestions, employee attitude surveys, okay? All of these, and some of these in here in terms of employee suggestions, attitude surveys, some of these are called soft items. They're a little harder to measure. Customer attitudes towards the company, a little harder when you use surveys, etc. But what Kaplan says, the creator of the balanced scorecard, is you can use a combination of these two. Okay. In terms of the two different types of scorecards, there are two. One is strategic balanced scorecards. This is where management decides on what they want to do. They translate those goals, those broad objectives, those broad strategy statements into a set of measures that they can communicate down in a meaningful way throughout the organization. That is a strategy balanced scorecard. Monitor whether it is achieved. Operational scorecards identify the important processes to be monitored within each of these boxes. This is here where you get into the leading indicators a great deal. Okay. Lastly, obviously what a company really is interested in, within the constraints of meeting all of their legal responsibilities and social responsibilities, within those constraints, they want to maximize shareholder wealth and profits over the long run. However, to achieve that, you really got to be successful in a whole multiple of areas. All right? And therefore, you have to use performance indicators to direct and stimulate organization goals. Okay? And the way that all works really is, here's something I'd like you to carry away from here. You have goals and objectives, okay? Strategies. You convert those to performance indicators. To those performance indicators, you set targets. Okay, you set targets. And those targets, okay, those targets really are budgets. So you not only can budget financial items, you can budget defect rates, number of injuries. You can budget these things, okay? And then finally, initiatives. So what you'll see in a lot of these tables are 4 items. 1, goals. 2, performance indicators that track those goals. 3, performance indicators that track the budgeted levels or targeted levels that you want to achieve. And lastly, describing initiatives to make this happen. And so you are turning your strategies in this way into operational reality. Of course, you can use pay and performance incentives to stimulate managers and employees to take actions that are consistent with top management strategy. Okay, and there it is. Organizational goals and strategies, performance measures, targeted achievement levels, that's budgets. Employee rewards, by the way, employee rewards and punishments. And punishments.